Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Hope you're all doing well. Today, if you haven't noticed, I am not wearing any brows. I've done all of my makeup, but I wanted to do an updated brow tutorial. I've had some unruly brows as far as hairs in places that they shouldn't be. So I finally got my brows waxed and now they're in nice shape. So I thought this was the perfect time before they start getting unruly again to film my updated brow routine. Normally in my tutorials, I kind of just do them off camera and tell you the products that I used, but today we're going all out and I'm going to do a step-by-step of how I do my brows now. I'm going to be showing you two different versions. One is kind of my everyday, I'm not wearing any makeup, but I need some sort of color because my brows are just too light for my hair color, and the hairs itself are dark, but I just have such sparse hairs that they kind of look lighter or almost grayish, and I need a little bit of color to kind of even things out. Before I go into the products that I'll be using today, just keep in mind this is how I do my brows. I definitely do different techniques when I'm working on different clients. I'll use eyeshadows, I'll use pomades, pencils, different things. So this is just what works for me and what I like on myself, but doesn't mean that you have to use these specific items, brands, that kind of thing. This is just really to show you what I do for my brows to kind of create as much of a natural brow as possible. So enough of that intro, let's get into the tools that you will need. First is a spoolie. I always have to have a spoolie. The spoolie I have is a little fancy, and this is not something that you definitely need. This is just one that I got when I received my training for lash extensions. So this one is, you know, pulls up and you have the spoolie there, which is kind of cool. But you can get disposable ones at the drugstore. You can order them on Amazon and get a whole pack of them and then just toss them when they're gross. So you can use something like this. Usually some liner brushes have the spoolie on one end. Whatever you have, you need a spoolie. I like spoolies better than the brushes that come like this. This is a Real Techniques lash and brow groomer, and they have the brush like that. I don't like that. I feel like I'm using a broom to brush my brows. I just keep this around because I like the metal end that helps with lashes. But let's move on. So you're going to need a spoolie of any kind. I'm using two different brow products. One is more of a liquid product, and that is the Wonder Brow. This is in the shade Brunette. It is a brow gel, but it is not something I use specifically as a brow gel. I use it on my everyday looks, and we'll get into that. The next thing is a brow pencil. I always fill in my brows with a brow pencil if I'm looking for more defined brows, kind of create those little hairs, and I have three that I love and highly recommend. The first one is the oldest that I've been using the longest, and that would be the NYX Micro Brow Pencil. Absolutely love this. This will always be my go-to holy grail kind of product. I just absolutely love the formula of it. This actually has a spoolie on one end. All of my pencils besides one has that, so if you didn't have a spoolie separate and you got one of these pencils, you could just use this end, which makes things so much more convenient. One less thing you have to pack if you're traveling. Do like the packaging of this for that reason. This is in the shade Ash Brown, and this is definitely my color that I can use all year around. It's a perfect neutral brown. It does lean ashy, but I find it's not too gray, because sometimes you'll find something looks a little too gray, and this doesn't. It's just that perfect ash brown. The next one is the Cella Tantalizing Taupe Eyebrow Color. I believe this is the only shade they have, so it's supposed to be a universal shade, and it is a perfect taupe. That's the shade that I go for my brows. You have to find the right one for you. I always go by my hair color. So My roots are a different color than the highlights in my hair, and I always go with the root color to match brows, whether I'm working on myself, I'm working on a client. That's kind of my rule of thumb and how I figure out a color. But this pencil is great. This is one that I've gotten in monthly subscriptions, and I absolutely love it. It does not have a spoolie on one end. It's just the pencil, so you would need a separate one. And then the last pencil that I absolutely love is the L'Oreal Brow Stylist Definer. This was the most recent find, I guess, because I feel that the drugstore isn't very good with brow products. I know NYX is an affordable brand, but that's not one that was always at the drugstore. I mean, as far as L'Oreal, Maybelline, CoverGirl, those kinds of brands, I've never found one within the staple brands at the drugstore, and they came out with this. I was so happy. It's beautiful. It compares to the NYX one, to the Cello one. The only difference with this is I have the shade Brunette. There is a shade lighter that I'd like to try, but right now this is a tad bit too warm. This is my winter fall color, and my hair is a lot lighter. It just looks a little too harsh, and I've noticed that lately. I use this and then I think, ooh, my brows, that's a little too much. I would like to try a different color of this pencil just because I'd like to use this formula all year round. But either way, you want to find the pencil that works for you, whether it's one of these three brands or a totally different brand. I find that I like these micro pencils, the ones that have the tiny little nib that crank up, because I don't like the sharpening kind. They just, I don't know, they never get such a sharp tip. You could sharpen it, use it for a couple strokes, and then it's already dull again. Definitely try different ones, and I always go back to something of this style. So just a little tip. And also just remember, because I have sparse brows, I have to create hair. If you have full brows, very dense brows, and all you need to is maybe define the tail a little bit, you may not need something so defined. You could probably get away with maybe just a little eyeshadow or a little brow gel and not need to create those hairs. But for me, and if you're someone who has very bald, sparse, light eyebrows and you need to fill in those gaps, or even if you have a scar on your eyebrow and you need to fill in that gap, these are the kind of formulas that I recommend. And the last product that I would like to recommend, and it's not one that you definitely need, it's not a necessity, is a brow gel to kind of set things. I find that this adds a little bit of color if you get one that does have color. There's also brow gels that are clear, but I get, and I apologize for the packaging, but it always wears off. This is the L'Oreal Brow Stylist Plumper. It's part of the same line. These kind of, you know, packaging's the same. It's the same line as the definer pencil. I have used this. This is my second tube, and I love this. It adds some color, adds some texture to my brows, especially if you have very sparse brows. But this could be all you need if you have dense, full brows. So something to keep it in mind, but I recommend this one. And it's drugstore, it's affordable, I love it. I've never used the clear brow gel before because I don't have a lot of hair. It's not super long. It's not like they fly away or move throughout the day. But if you're someone who just needs to kind of keep them in place, just get a clear one if that's what you're looking for. Okay, so on to the demo of how I do my brows. So the first thing is my everyday brow. And this is actually a recent technique, I guess, a recent this is actually more of a recent thing for me. If I don't want to take the time and fill in all those little hairs and create fuller, more defined brows, I'll use the Wonder Brow. As you can see between the two, this one adds some warmth, has some color. It's enough to give me a little something, but it's not completely defined. I could definitely go in and fill in some of these gaps right here. I have this little bald spot, you know, I could add some more fake hairs to my brow. But this, such an easy, just quick little brush it through with the spoolie, and I go for my day. that would definitely be more of an everyday look. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other side, especially which I don't know if I lost that footage, which is so annoying. I wish my camera beeped or something when I know it stops recording. So let's go ahead. And again, I'm getting it straight from the Wonder Brow tube, and I've actually taken off most of that excess. So I'm just using I'm just following where the hairs are. And what's great about the Wonder Brow product is it's actually waterproof. If you were to wash your face, use a cleanser, or use a makeup wipe, it's going to, you know, get removed. So it's not completely foolproof in that way. You don't have to use a special cleanser, but I find that it lasts a lot longer, and you don't have to worry about color kind of running. So there you have it. There is my everyday, super easy fill in my brows. But now I want more defined brows. So I'm going to grab my pencil. And I think for today, I'm going to use the Cello one. So I'm going to go and we'll start on this side here. And I like to start at the front and kind of just give little flicks and add definition on the bottom part of the brow. I like to leave the top less defined and more fluffy with hair flicks because it looks more natural. So I'm just going and creating these little flicks. And I find the easiest way to hold your pencil if you're worried about being too harsh is obviously you don't hold it like you're about to kill somebody with a knife. Hold it at the end, as far to the end as you can, and just kind of give little flicks with your wrist. That will help control the amount of pressure you're putting down on your pencil, and you won't get that stark line. I hope that made sense. So we're going to go back here, create those little hairs, and since I already have the Wonder Brow product on, I'm just creating the little hairs in the bald spots. And throughout your application of that pencil, grab your spoolie and brush through. It helps disperse the product and soften up the pencil a little bit and make it look a lot more natural. So I'm actually going to go in the front, and for the front, I just go up and down. You don't want the front of your brow to be too harsh because that's when you start to look like you got angry brows. And then I'm just going to the top, and instead of creating a harsh line, I'm just going in the direction of the hair and creating tiny little flicks. And that's somewhat done. I mean, we have one more step that I'll show you, but for the most part, those are filled in. So let's go ahead and work on this other side. Okay, so now for the next brow, just start the same way. Go horizontal at the bottom. Just create those little flicks. And again, like I said, you may not need to fill in throughout, and you just have to define the tail a little bit. Even better. Takes less time. And I always say, look off to the side when you're doing the tail, because if you start doing things when you're looking straight in the mirror, you can't see the angle you're at, and things are going to start to go a little crazy. So I always go to the side And I don't go back and forth too many times to make sure both eyebrows are perfectly angled and symmetrical. And I'm happy with how those look. So I think I'm gonna stop there before I just get a little too overdone. And I'm gonna actually go in with a third step and use that colored brow gel from L'Oreal. And this is not something I would do every day if I'm just on the go, going grocery shopping or something. But if you wanna add more texture and kind of amp things up a little bit, adds a little color. And again, I'm just brushing lightly. I'm not going deep and pressing down on the skin, because that's when you start to get the product transfer on the skin and you'll get specks and it will look odd. So I'm just lightly brushing the brows through. And if you ever feel like you get too much on the wand, just brush it off with a little tissue. I just like how it sometimes grabs more hairs in some areas and creates more texture. And I always go in and brush one more time with my spoolie. And the brows are done. And if I were to touch them, they're set, they're not gonna move, but they're not crunchy. You know what I mean? I hate crunchy brows. I think that just feels gross on the face. But that's basically it. Makeup is so subjective. What I'm going to do on myself, what I'm going to do on a client is maybe not what you're going to do in your everyday life. So just make it your own. Use the products that you love. But these are just some suggestions. These are things that I've put to the test and I swear by. I love them. And yeah, that's my new updated brow routine. I hope that you enjoyed that video and it was helpful and useful for you to use as a guide. Don't forget to comment below if you do have questions. I'm happy to answer them. And of course, if you do like this video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed and you want to keep up with my videos, you know where that button lives. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye. Look at this imprint. Look at that. That is gorgeous. This is Wet n Wild. I have higher end, products that don't have this beautiful design in them. Even my Becca Shimmering Skin Perfector, they don't have this gorgeous design. It's just flat. I mean, the packaging is 10 times better, but you know what I'm saying?